They say the loudest moments in history aren't always explosions or roaring crowds, but the soft whispers of children who have finally reached their limit. On March 10th, 2026, inside a sterile, high-security courtroom in California, a silence settled so heavily that it felt as if its weight traveled across the Atlantic, all the way to the gates of Buckingham Palace. This was the moment when the world's most famous modern royal fairy tale didn't simply crack, it completely shattered. For years, the public had been presented with a carefully crafted narrative: organic gardens, backyard chicken coops, and a picture-perfect life of freedom beneath the California sun. But once the cameras stopped filming and the PR teams could no longer steer the narrative, the truth began to surface. And that truth wasn't revealed in a Netflix documentary or on the glossy pages of a magazine. It emerged from the words of two young children who stood before two of the most famous figures on Earth and chose someone else entirely. The consequences of that moment have reshaped everything we thought we understood about Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. This story involves emotional distance, mounting financial troubles, and even an ancient royal protocol that hasn't been invoked for nearly 70 years. But before we dive into the secret files and the millions in debt, we need to talk about the woman at the center of the storm. She was someone the public rarely noticed, a quiet figure appearing only in the background of blurred paparazzi photographs. Yet today, the Sussex children call her something that has reportedly pushed Meghan into a state of uncontrollable fury. They no longer refer to her as the nanny. To Archie and Lily, she is simply Mama Elena. The courtroom drama began with a question no child should ever be forced to answer. Amid what has quickly become one of the most toxic royal divorces of the century, the judge needed to know a simple thing. Where did Archie and Lily feel safest? In high-stakes custody battles. This is typically the moment when parents begin performing, attempting to demonstrate who offers the better home or the more nurturing environment. But Harry and Meghan's children didn't follow that script. When asked whether they wanted to live with their father, the prince, or their mother, the Duchess, their response wasn't a spoken name. It was an action. According to reports, they turned away from both parents and instead clung tightly to Elena Rodriguez, a 40-year-old childhood development specialist who has quietly existed within the Sussex household for years. Elena isn't merely a caregiver. Over time, she has become the children's primary emotional anchor, while their parents focused on building global brands and launching billion-dollar legal battles. Yet there is an even deeper and more mysterious layer to this relationship, one that has sparked persistent whispers among Montecito's elite social circles. Take a close look at the rare photographs showing the children alongside Elena. Many observers have noted something unusual, an almost uncanny physical resemblance. Elena shares a similar warmth in her complexion, and even a striking hint of auburn in her hair, a trait closely associated with the Windsor-Spencer lineage that appears in both Archie and Lily. This resemblance has fueled speculation that Elena's role in the household may have extended beyond professional caregiving. Some insiders quietly suggest she may have been the children's true maternal presence from the very beginning, a woman Meghan allegedly kept hidden in the background while fulfilling a biological role the Duchess either couldn't or chose not to manage herself. While none of these rumors have been confirmed, the children's behavior in court has made them impossible to dismiss entirely. Lily didn't simply gesture toward Elena, she called her Mama. And this wasn't a sudden development. The tension inside the Montecito mansion had reportedly been escalating for more than a year, finally reaching a breaking point when Meghan realized she was losing the children's affection. Last year, believing her children were growing closer to staff members than to their own mother, Meghan reportedly attempted to dismiss Elena under the explanation of restructuring the household. She claimed Elena had become too involved. But insiders say the real issue was jealousy. A mother struggling with the presence of a woman who was effectively doing the work of parenting. The consequences were devastating. Following Elena's removal, Archie and Lily allegedly began suffering from intense night terrors and refused to eat for nearly an entire week. Watching his children deteriorate emotionally, Harry made a decision he had never dared to make before. He defied Meghan. In a move that many believe marked the true end of their marriage, Harry secretly rehired Elena using a private trust, effectively creating a small, independent world within his own home where Meghan's authority stopped at the nursery door. But Harry's apparent victory didn't last long. While he believed he was protecting his children's mental health, he was unknowingly providing the California court with the evidence it needed to potentially remove those children altogether. Because behind the emotional turmoil, the financial foundation of the Sussex empire was quietly collapsing. Forensic financial audits presented to the court revealed an alarming situation of housing instability. The Montecito estate, the very symbol of their American dream, is currently burdened by a $9.4 million bridge loan, carrying a predatory interest rate of 14.25%. With the Archwell Foundation reportedly approaching insolvency and lenders growing increasingly wary due to the couple's ongoing legal battles, foreclosure is no longer a distant possibility. It is an approaching reality. The court's reasoning is brutally simple. If parents cannot guarantee stable housing for their children over the next 9 months, the home environment is considered unstable by definition. And then there was Harry's $59 million mistake. In his relentless quest for justice against the British Crown, Harry filed a massive lawsuit arguing that he had suffered from deep intergenerational trauma and severe psychological vulnerability. To support his claim, Harry submitted a staggering 2,000-page psychiatric evaluation. But within the United States child welfare system, that same document quickly became a legal trap. Officials at the Department of Children and Family Services examined Harry's own statements and raised a troubling question. If he truly was as psychologically damaged and emotionally unstable as he claimed in his lawsuit, how could he be considered capable of raising 2 young children in such a high-pressure environment? In attempting to secure a financial settlement from his father, Harry had inadvertently presented California authorities with evidence suggesting he might be an unfit parent. As the state prepared to initiate a juvenile dependency investigation, a process that could have resulted in the children being placed in a state-run group home, another force was quietly mobilizing across the Atlantic. Princess, and had been watching, known as the unshakable backbone of the House of Windsor, and did not arrive with gestures of reconciliation. Instead, she arrived with something far more decisive: Operation Shelter. With a 150-page dossier in hand and convened an emergency session of the Privy Council, this file wasn't built from tabloid speculation or rumors. It contained meticulously time-stamped records detailing every hour Harry and Meghan had spent away from their children, each orchestrated photo opportunity, and every encrypted exchange connected to their public narrative. Yet the most alarming section of the dossier reportedly involved Prince Andrew. According to internal reports, Meghan had allegedly been engaging in quiet back-channel conversations with associates linked to Andrew, searching for potential legal weaknesses within the royal family's institutional framework, vulnerabilities she could later use to maintain leverage through the children. In return, she was said to have offered the possibility of using her powerful media platforms to help rehabilitate Andrew's deeply damaged reputation. For Princess, and that revelation crossed a line. Her response wasn't simply anger, it was action. She authorized the activation of a rarely used legal mechanism known as Royal Succession Stabilization Protocol 12, a measure that had remained untouched for 70 years. Protocol 12 is a sovereign decree granting the reigning monarch ultimate guardianship over any minor in the direct line of succession if their physical safety, moral welfare, or dynastic identity is considered to be under serious threat. By invoking this protocol, the British government sent a clear diplomatic message to the United States. Archie and Lily were not merely private California residents. They were members of a royal bloodline, and therefore wards of a sovereign state. Suddenly, the California courtroom found itself dealing with something far beyond a routine custody dispute. It had become a matter of international consequence. But the real brilliance of the strategy wasn't the legal maneuver itself. It was Elena, princess, and understood that removing the children from the only maternal figure they trusted could cause even greater emotional harm. So the Crown extended Elena Rodriguez an offer designed to secure her cooperation and her future. If she agreed to accompany Archie and Lily back to the United Kingdom, she would receive full sanctuary under royal protection. The offer included a lifelong service contract, housing within the Windsor estate, and guaranteed financial support for her family back in the United States. In essence, the Crown wasn't just rescuing the children. They were rescuing the nanny as well. The final courtroom signing unfolded with the weight of a Greek tragedy. Prince Harry, a man who once stood at the center of global admiration, sat in the California courtroom appearing visibly hollowed out. When the moment came to sign the 94-page agreement relinquishing his primary parental rights, witnesses say his hand trembled. He understood that by signing those papers, he was acknowledging a painful truth. The freedom he had fought so fiercely for had ultimately become a prison for his own children. Before completing the signature, those present say Harry quietly whispered, "If this protects them, I'll disappear myself." And with that, he let go. For Harry, it was the final act of a father who realized the battle had already been lost. Meghan, however, chose a very different path. She did not attend the hearing in person. Instead, she appeared through a remote video link, delivering what observers described as a final statement filled with icy defiance. She characterized the British monarchy as a death trap and insisted she would rather see her children placed in California's foster system than raised under the influence of Princess Catherine. But by that point, her words carried little weight. The court had already reviewed disturbing evidence connected to a leaked project known as Mother of Grace, a proposed memoir and digital platform where Meghan allegedly planned to monetize the children's biometric data and generate AI-driven avatars of them for a global educational initiative. The judge reportedly reacted with visible shock. The image of a protective mother had collapsed, replaced by the unsettling picture of someone prepared to transform her own children into licensed intellectual property. As the sun set on March 11th, a private charter arranged by the UK Home Office quietly landed inside a secluded hangar in Santa Barbara. There were no cameras, no red carpets, no public relations teams. Only two children holding tightly to the hands of Elena Rodriguez as they were gently guided onto the aircraft. Their destination wasn't a gilded prison, nor a bleak exile. They were flying to Adelaide Cottage, located within the Windsor estate. There, they would grow up surrounded by their cousins, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis, within a carefully structured environment designed to support healing and stability. The arrangement would be overseen by Princess Catherine alongside Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh. The conflict, at last, was over, and the silence coming from Windsor was no longer the silence of war, but the quiet calm of resolution. Harry, for now, remains in California, tied to a mortgage he can barely manage and carrying the heavy shadow of a failed legacy. Meghan stands alone within the cavernous halls of Montecito, attempting to recalculate a fairy tale that ended not with a crown, but with a court ruling. Meanwhile, the children are finally being allowed something simple. They are allowed to be children. No cameras, no staged scenes in the garden, no more roles as pawns in a global branding war. They are finally home. Yet, as the dust begins to settle, another question quietly emerges. With Archie and Lily now wards of the crown, and Harry effectively removed from their daily lives, what becomes of the Sussex titles? And perhaps even more unsettling, if the rumors surrounding Elena Rodriguez's biological connection were ever proven true, what consequences might that have for the royal line of succession? The saga of the Montecito royals may have reached its legal conclusion, but the secrets surrounding those auburn-haired children are only beginning to emerge. The courtroom ruling was merely the first step toward a far darker revelation, one that much of the mainstream media has yet to fully explore. While public attention remained fixed on the courtroom drama, the forensic investigators assigned to the case were quietly uncovering a digital trail that would make even veteran royal analysts uneasy. The Mother of Grace audio tapes, it turns out, were far more than a failed business concept. They outlined a carefully constructed blueprint for a future that Archie and Lily were never truly meant to experience as ordinary children. Within the unedited recordings, Meghan can reportedly be heard discussing the commercial potential of her children's milestones. One recording, dated only 3 months earlier, allegedly captures a conversation about strategically timing Lily's birthday for a potential brand collaboration. In that exchange, Meghan is said to have remarked that the child's natural spontaneity didn't translate into the kind of curated aesthetic required for profitable partnerships. For a California judge, that crossed a critical line. The issue had moved beyond strict parenting choices and into something far more troubling, the psychological commodification of childhood. In that moment, the court concluded that the children weren't simply being raised. They were being managed. Yet the commercial aspect of the story wasn't even the most disturbing discovery. Behind the walls of the Montecito estate existed something staff members later referred to as the ghost protocol. Once the court released former employees from the strict non-disclosure agreements they had signed, neighbors and staff members began describing a household divided by more than architecture. They spoke of a two-tier existence inside the mansion. In the glamorous public sections of the home, Harry and Meghan reportedly spent their time conducting high-stakes Zoom meetings, preparing media strategies, and attending designer fittings. Meanwhile, in a separate and more isolated wing of the property, the children lived almost entirely with Elena. The testimony from staff members was deeply unsettling. They claimed that for extended periods, the children only saw their parents during carefully scheduled appearances, moments arranged either for social media content or when prominent guests were visiting. At all other times, the children were told that their parents were working for the world. One staff member recalled Archie asking why the world seemed more important than his bedtime story. Court-appointed psychologists later described this environment as a classic example of attachment trauma. According to their evaluation, the children's rejection of their parents in court wasn't an act of rebellion. It was a survival response. While Harry and Meghan fought their legal battle in California, Princess Catherine had been preparing quietly for a completely different mission, one focused on healing. Sources within Kensington Palace have revealed that Catherine did not simply accept the role of co-guardian after the ruling. She had reportedly been preparing for the possibility for nearly 2 years. During that time, she consulted leading specialists in childhood trauma and developmental psychology to ensure the transition from the high-pressure environment of Montecito to the quiet stability of Windsor would not further destabilize the children. She understood that Archie and Lily would need far more than a bedroom. They would need a sanctuary. The preparation of Adelaide Cottage was carried out with remarkable precision. Catherine insisted that Elena Rodriguez remain central to the children's new environment, recognizing that removing her would mean separating them from the only maternal figure they truly trusted. For many observers, this decision represented Catherine's quiet act of grace, prioritizing the children's well-being above years of personal conflict and public criticism. But while the children began adjusting to their new life, the full weight of what Harry and Meghan had lost was beginning to settle in. Back in California, the Montecito mansion, once a proud symbol of their independence, now stands as an empty monument to a dream that collapsed. With the $9.4 million bridge loan in default and Harry's $59 million lawsuit abandoned. The Sussexes now face a financial cliff that appears nearly impossible to recover from. Without the marketable image of the royal children to support future Netflix projects or publishing deals, their commercial value has reportedly plummeted. Meanwhile, Archewell, once promoted as a major philanthropic enterprise, is now under investigation for possible irregularities involving the allocation of funds between charitable programs and personal security expenses. The moving trucks that neighbors have recently seen around the Montecito property may not be preparing for relocation at all. They may be preparing for liquidation. Yet perhaps the most tragic figure in this entire story is Prince Harry. In the hours after signing away his parental rights, he reportedly did not return to the mansion. Instead, witnesses spotted him checking into a small, unremarkable hotel in Santa Barbara. Those who saw him described a man who looked as though he had finally awakened from a 6-year fever dream, only to realize the life he once had was gone. Sources suggest Harry has since attempted to contact his brother, Prince William, through a series of late-night phone calls. But the response from London has been silence, distant, professional silence. The Windsor firewall has been fully activated. It functions not only as a legal shield protecting the children, but as a complete social blackout for the man who once broke the family's trust. Harry now exists in a strange and lonely space, a prince without a kingdom, a father separated from his children, and a husband to a woman who reportedly blames him for the entire collapse. As for Meghan, her anger has reportedly transformed into something far more calculated. Sources close to her public relations team suggest she is preparing a scorched earth media campaign, a final documentary intended to portray the California court system as an extension of the British monarchy's influence. But this time, the public response may be very different, because the audience that once believed the fairy tale is no longer convinced. The #NotRoyals movement has now grown into something far larger, evolving into a broader debate about child protection and the ethical boundaries of influencer parenting. Even many of Meghan's former allies in Hollywood have chosen to remain silent, recognizing that any association with the Sussex name has quickly become a branding risk. She now stands alone in what feels like a house of mirrors, still searching for the angle that casts her as the victim, even as those mirrors are slowly being removed by the banks reclaiming the property. And then there is the Elena mystery. Speculation about her possible biological connection to the children has recently taken an even more surprising turn. A group of independent forensic genealogists, intrigued by the striking resemblance noted during the court proceedings, began tracing the family's past movements. Their research pointed towards several private medical clinics in Eastern Europe that the Sussexes reportedly visited during the months leading up to Archie's birth, a period where public records appear unusually quiet. No official DNA results have ever been released to the public, yet the Crown's decision to grant Elena a lifetime service contract and a residence on royal property has only intensified speculation that the palace may know more than it has chosen to reveal. So the question continues to linger. Is Elena Rodriguez simply a loyal nanny who stepped in during a family crisis, or could she be the missing piece of a far more complex royal puzzle, one that might reshape the future line of succession itself? For now, the children are safe. Behind the ancient stone walls of Windsor, they are slowly learning what it means to belong to a family that values duty over public approval. They are discovering the history and traditions that were nearly taken from them. And perhaps for the first time in their young lives, they are no longer being asked to perform. Yet the shadow of Montecito will never fully disappear. It will remain a quiet reminder of the cost of a freedom that was built upon debt, ambition, and digital illusion. The struggle over Archie and Lily may finally be finished, but the consequences of the Sussex collapse are still unfolding, written quietly in the corridors of Buckingham Palace and in the empty rooms of a California mansion that, in the end, was never truly a home.